Welcome. My name is Mark. I'm a Dharma teacher in the Nichiren Buddhist tradition. I've been practicing for 50 years, and most of those years I've been fascinated by a question that scholarship tends to avoid. How much did the world's great spiritual traditions shape each other? We know that silk and spices traveled the ancient trade routes between Greece, Persia, India, Central Asia, and China. But ideas traveled those same roads, carried by the same merchants, the same monks, the same caravans. A Greek philosopher meets an Indian ascetic outside Taxila. A Buddhist sutra gets translated into Chinese using Taoist vocabulary. A story about the Buddha gets retold so many times across so many cultures that he ends up canonized as a Christian saint. What you're about to hear is a work of fiction. Why fiction? Because we will never know all the little details and events that make up the large arcs of history. Sometimes all we can do is bring to life ancient events is through educated speculations. These stories are my own imagination of what might have been. This video series is 9 stories, set as episodes, along the Silk Road, spanning from 326 before the Common Era to 1900 in the Common Era. The characters are all imagined, but the historical context is real. Each story explores a moment where traditions collided, borrowed from each other, misunderstood each other productively, and emerged transformed. This new video series is called The Thread Between Worlds. And this is episode 1, The Gymnosophist's Question. So I hope you enjoy this. Now I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud. The Thread Between Worlds. Vignettes along the Silk Road. A work of fiction. The dedication is for all who carried ideas in their saddlebags, along with the silk and the cinnamon. The camel does not know what doctrine it carries, but the merchant does, and the monk beside him, attributed to no one, remembered by everyone. The Gymnosophist's Question, Taxila, 326 before the Common Era. The Greek soldiers called them Gymnosophisti, the naked wise men, because they could not fathom why anyone would stand unclothed in the sun for hours on end. Indifferent to the flies that crawled across their shoulders, apparently thinking about nothing, Pyrrho of Elis found them fascinating. He had come east with Alexander's army as something between a philosopher and a curiosity. A man who professed to know nothing, attached to the conqueror who believed he knew everything. The irony was not lost on Pyrrho, though he would have said he was not certain enough about irony to claim it. The one called Dunhuang received him in a grove of mango trees outside the walls of Taxila. Pyrrho had prepared a question in the Greek manner, a carefully structured dilemma about the nature of perception and whether the senses could be trusted to deliver truth. He had been working on it for weeks, during the march to the Hindu Kush, polishing each premise like a gemstone. Dunhuang listened through the interpreter, a Gandharan merchant named Kalpaka, who traded in both languages and, it seemed, in ideas as well. When Pyrrho finished, Dunhuang was quiet for a long time. Then he picked up a handful of dust and let it fall through his fingers. Your question assumes that there is a self that perceives in a world that is perceived, the interpreter relayed. But what if neither is as solid as this dust? What if the one who asks and the thing asked about arise together and fall together, like the dust between my fingers? Pyrrho felt something shift between his eyes. He had spent years among the academics and the sophists arguing about whether certainty was possible. He had built elegant proofs that it was not, But this man, this naked, sun-blackened ascetic, was saying something different. Not that certainty was impossible, but that the entire framework of knower and known was a kind of fever, that the cure was not better arguments, but something more like release. How does one achieve this release? Pyro asked. Dandamas smiled. You are already closer than you think. Your Greek word, apatheia, you call it freedom from disturbance. We have a similar word. We call it upekkha. But we do not arrive at it through argument. We arrive at it through sitting very still and watching the mind eat itself. Kalpaka, the interpreter, paused before translating this last phrase because he was not sure the mind eating itself would make sense in Greek. He chose instead the phrase observing the dissolution of mental formations. Neither translation was quite right, but both were adequate. Pyro returned to the Greek camp that evening and told Anaxarchus, his teacher, that he had learned more in one afternoon than in 10 years in Athens. Anaxarchus, who was jealous and also drunk, told him he was being sentimental. Pyro did not argue the point. He was already beginning to find argument less interesting than silence. Years later, back in Elis, Pyro would teach a philosophy of radical suspension. Apake, he called it, the withholding of judgment. His students noted that he seemed peculiarly at peace, that he did not react to thunderstorms or barking dogs or insults, that he walked through the world as if he were a painting and he was only passing through. This attributed to his genius. He attributed it to a man he met once in a mango grove who had shown him that the ground beneath every argument was empty. He never mentioned the dust. I hope you enjoyed that first episode as much as I enjoyed reading it to you, and it gives you some things to think about. Next week, we'll move to our second vignette. I hope you'll come again. And if you do like what you just heard, please leave a like, a nice comment, and subscribe to my channel. It really does help. I'll see you along the road.